Hello everyone, my name is Greg and I dev stuff. Welcome everyone to episode 27 of Stardew Valley-like game in Unity. In this episode we will implement item converters. This episode is brought to you by generous support of people on Patreon. If you want to join them, link to my Patreon in the description. Before we begin, let's fix a small issue which plagued our game for a long time. In the toolbar controller, remove this equal sign to make it so our scrolling will work properly. I feel like I did this fix before. Strange feeling of deja vu. Maybe I didn't save the script that time. So in Stardew Valley you have an option to convert items by using place machines or objects on the map. For example, you can smelt ore into ingots. Or maybe you have a candy machine which will accept the coins in exchange for a random item. We want to make it an ability to pull out an item out of inventory and place it inside the processor. Let's set up our placeable smelter by creating a prefab for it. I don't have a good graphics for the smelter yet. I will look for one next time. Create a new item for newly created placeable object, which we will call a smelter. Then let's create two new items, iron ore and iron ingot. Good. Now we want to make it so when we have iron ore, we can convert it into iron ingot by smelting it. Let's add the iron ore into our inventory. Then create another new script called item converter interact. Which will inherit from the interactable class. Good. Now inside we want to make it so when we interact with the object, we want to check the item in our drag and droppable slot. If that item is acceptable type for the item smelter, if yes, smelt it. So create serialized field of type item called convertible item. Serialized field produce. And private variable of type item slot called stored item. Serialized field of type float time to process. And private variable timer. And on the interact, check if the item you are currently drag is the acceptable item. If yes, then let's create and call new method called start item processing. Problem is item drag and drop controller has its item slot as private serialized variable, so we can't access it from the item converter script. So let's create a new method called check, which will accept item and count as a parameter. Inside we want to check does our item, which we right now drag and drop, meet the parameters we have passed. If the item is stackable, then we need to check for item type and for item count. If not, then simply for an item match. Inside the newly created method, put a dragged item into the item slot. Create and add a new method called removeItem on the item drag and drop controller. Where we will decrease an amount of item if the item is stackable, or remove item altogether if it's not stackable. Don't forget to call updateIcon when you are done. Before we continue, let's add exit gates in the case we have a no item in the item slot. Then inside the update, check if the item is not null and timer is more than 0. If true, then start decreasing time. When the timer reaches less than 0, let's throw a debug message that we have completed the smelting process. Let's test this. So pull out an item from your inventory and interact with the object. Good. Don't forget to put your item back into the inventory or you will lose it after turning the game off. Back to the interact. We just place the item into the processor. Now we want to convert it into a different item after it is done conversion and get it out of the processor when player interact with the smelter. So after you are done processing the item, call and create a new method called complete item processor. Inside we will place a processed item into our item slot. Then, in the interact, if we done processing the item, when we interact, we want to give an item to our player. That is all. Let's test this. So, right after we are done processing an item, we should be able to take out the item back into our inventory in its processed form. Good. Well, I forgot to mark our ingot as a stackable item. Wait, you can simply combine them by clicking on each other like this? Let's fix this. Open the item drag and drop controller. Inside the on click, we want to look into the case when we click on the item slot, which is not null. That will be the else part over here. We want to compare our item in the item slot we clicked and item slot we are using for item drag and drop controller. If they are identical, we want to simply combine the count of the items together. Let's animate our item processor, and we will do it inside the Unity. This is not a perfect solution, but will be more than enough for our case. Add animator to the smelter, create new animator controller called Object Deform Animator. Create two states, one for idle and one for working, and parameter, which we'll use for transition between those two states. Then animate the object. We will simply squish it a little when it works. And inside the script, we want to store reference to the animator. If your object is actively converting the item set working parameter to true, and false if it is done converting. Now assign the clips to the states. Good. There is an issue with persistency right now. You see, if we move between areas and then come back, it will not save what our object was doing. We will be solving this issue later on in the next episodes. Good, this is it for this episode. If you have any questions or any ideas about code, please leave your comment below. If you are interested in seeing what will come out of this, please subscribe. If you want to support further, you can find my Patreon in the description. Special thank you to Stefan and Cameron Smith for their generous support. With best regards, see you in the next episode.